Welcome to today's deep dive. If you're tuning in right now, chances are you are a planner, and you're probably deep in the trenches gearing up for your professional exam.
Yeah, we see you. We know you're likely, buried under a mountain of policy documents right now.
Exactly. And we also know that studying professional ethics can sometimes feel, well, it can feel a bit abstract.
No, absolutely. It often reads like a really dry list of just things you aren't supposed to do.
Right. But today we are pulling apart a really fantastic piece of source material that takes those abstract concepts and just turns them into a series of highly relatable fly-on-the-wall moments.
Which is honestly the best way to approach this material. Because the reality of professional ethics, it isn't found in a textbook. It's found in the everyday interactions happening right at the planning counter.
Yep, those messy, uncomfortable gray areas, those are exactly what will test you on your exam and, honestly, in your career.
Completely agree. Understanding the nuances of those interactions is, it's what separates someone who just memorized the rules from someone who actually understands the professional mandate.
So our focus today is an excerpt from the fall 2018 issue of Plan Canada. It's titled Professional Ethics, Lobbying, and Post-Employment Conduct.
That's such a great read.
It really is. The author brilliantly structures this piece not as a lecture, but as a series of 4 interconnected conversations happening in and around a typical municipal planning department.
Yeah, and then it follows up those scenarios with a really hard-hitting analysis of the Canadian Institute of Planners, the CIP, and their ethical standards.
So by the end of this deep dive, you're going to have a mastery of this material. You can just listen, absorb, and take these insights right into your exam without even needing to read the original text.
And what stands out immediately in this document is how it tackles the revolving
The
door.
revolving door, right?
Yeah, we're talking about that constant movement of professionals between public sector planning jobs and private sector consulting. It is an area that is just ripe for ethical missteps.
Definitely. And the text throws us right into the deep end
Yeah.
with a scenario that I think practically every public planner has either witnessed or experienced firsthand.
Oh, for sure.
Let's set the scene for that very first interaction. So imagine you are standing at the public planning counter. It's a busy day. On one side of the counter is a junior staff planner.
Okay.
And on the other side is a former senior planner who used to work for the city, but is now a private consultant representing a developer.
Right. So we already have a tower dynamic at play.
Exactly. And this consultant is aggressively pressuring the staffer for a massive reduction in turnaround time for his client's permits.
A massive reduction.
Huge. The normal wait time for a project of this scale is about 10 weeks. But this ex-insider claims that because his plans aren't, quote, total crap like the other applications the city receives, he shouldn't have to wait in line. Yeah, he actually looks at the staffer and says, 4 weeks aren't going to be necessary. 4 days will be ample.
It is just a breathtaking display of entitlement, and it immediately establishes a toxic power dynamic.
It does. Now, the staff planner actually holds his ground pretty well at first. He calmly redirects the consultant, saying he'll note the comment on the file, and politely reminds him that he can track the progress on the online application system, just like everyone else.
Good for him.
Right. But the consultant refuses to take no for an answer. He makes a final move to bypass standard procedure by offering what looks suspiciously like a bribe dressed up as a networking opportunity.
Oh, this part.
He asks to leave his business card to ensure the staff planner gets an invitation to his client's golf tournament later this month.
Yeah, let's unpack the mechanics of this for your exam, because this interaction is an absolute goldmine of ethical violations. What you are witnessing here is the weaponization of former authority.
The weaponization of former authority. I like how you phrase that.
That's exactly what it is. This consultant knows the staff planner. He knows the internal system. He is using that shared history as a blunt intimidation tactic to demand preferential treatment.
He's essentially saying, I know how this place works. I used to be in charge. Push my file to the front.
Precisely. But the golf tournament invitation is the part that really it just crosses a massive red line.
It feels so blatant it made me wince reading it.
It is blatant, and it points to a direct violation of professional integrity regarding gifts and favors. That golf invitation is a textbook example of an inappropriate offer designed specifically to influence a public official's duties.
Right.
But beyond the explicit rule-breaking, I want you to think about the psychological position of that frontline staffer. Imagine being a junior planner facing down the person who perhaps used to sign your performance reviews.
Or who still wield significant influence in your professional network outside the city.
Exactly. Now that person is demanding a 4-day turnaround and waving a lucrative networking invite in your face. The text highlights how the revolving door puts immense, often unfair ethical pressure on the public employees who are left behind.
That pressure is palpable. And while that tense standoff is happening on one side of the room, there's actually a much quieter but arguably more dangerous conversation happening right down the counter.
This is where the ethical lines get incredibly blurry for the exam.
Yeah, so we are eavesdropping on a conversation between a planning consultant named Harland and the staff planner that Harland temporarily replaced during a maternity leave gig.
Okay, so Harlan used to be temporary staff.
Right. Harlan has just returned to her private practice, and she's submitting a relatively simple application for a client. It's just to raise an older bungalow and install a basement suite.
Seems straightforward.
A completely clean application. No variances are needed. The neighbors are all on board. It seems like an easy win.
On the surface, it looks like a harmless interaction between two former colleagues catching up.
Right up until the staff planner starts venting. She complains to Harland about other applicants, specifically small-time developers and their know-nothing agents, who fight over what she calls picayune details in their applications.
Oh, boy.
She actually jokes, you'd think they were building the Burj Khalifa.
That's a great line.
It is. And because Harlan's application is so clean, and because they're clearly friendly from working together recently, the staff planner hints at preferential treatment. She says she should be able to turn this clean application around by the end of the week.
Again, fast-tracking for friends.
Exactly. But then Harlan says something that really shifts the tone of the whole exchange.
She reveals the true value of her time spent in the public sector.
Yes. She explicitly thanks the staffer for the time spent covering the maternity leave. And then Harlan admits that her temporary stint on the inside really opened some eyes.
There it is.
She tells the staffer that she now has a much better idea of where builders are going to be looking for development sites and exactly how far the city can push them on off-site works and amenity contributions.
That is just incredible to say out loud.
She literally ends the conversation by saying, none of us learned that in planning school.
That statement right there is your smoking gun for the exam. Listen closely to this part. This is the explicit exploitation of insider knowledge for private gain.
Because she took a temporary maternity leave contract in the public sector.
And she walked away with the municipal playbook.
I want to pause on that for a second. The terms she uses, off-site works and amenity contributions, those can sometimes sound like standard planning jargon. Why is that specific knowledge so dangerous in the hands of a private consultant?
Because amenity contributions are often the biggest wild card in a developer's pro forma.
Or the financial model.
Exactly. When a city negotiates with a developer, they are trying to secure public benefits. Maybe that's a new park, affordable housing units, or infrastructure upgrades, all in exchange for granting development rights.
Makes sense.
The city has a bottom line, a walkaway point that they keep strictly internal. If a private consultant like Harlan knows exactly where that bottom line is before negotiations even start, she has completely rigged the game for her private clients.
She knows exactly how far she can push back without the city rejecting the proposal.
She did. She essentially used a temporary public job to grab the city's internal cheat codes, and this scenario demonstrates a crucial concept you need to remember for the exam. A seemingly harmless, temporary public role can fundamentally compromise a level playing field.
Because when she goes back to private practice,
She has asymmetric information. For your exam prep, you must recognize that professional ethics apply to all transitions. It doesn't matter if it was a short-term contract or a maternity leave fill-in. The unfair advantage gained here undermines the integrity of the entire planning process.
Now, let's step away from the counter for a second and look over at the plastic chairs in the waiting area. Because while all these insider winks and nods are happening, who is watching?
The public?
Exactly. We are now listening to the applicants holding numbers 46 and 47 from the ticket machine. And they have been sitting there observing everything we just talked about.
I think anyone who has ever had to pull a ticket and wait in a municipal office can relate to the frustration brewing in those chairs.
Totally, and they are highly observant. They are specifically watching the pushy consultant from our first scenario. They describe him as the guy with the Harry Potter glasses.
They notice everything.
And one of the applicants actually recognizes him. He realizes this was the guy who was in charge here when the applicant did a renovation years ago. These citizens are connecting the dots in real time.
We often assume that citizens don't understand the intricacies of planning departments, but they understand power dynamics perfectly well.
They note that this former boss just bypassed the entire line. They joke that he's likely consulting on a full city pension, and they know perfectly well he isn't standing at the counter to get a simple garden shed permit.
They see right through it.
They also caught the intimidation factor. One of them points out that the young staff guy at the counter looked totally intimidated.
This brings us to a foundational concept for your professional practice. Professional ethics are not just about actual demonstrable wrongdoing. They are equally about public perception.
So the optics matter just as much as the actual written rules.
They often matter more. You can have the most robust legal framework in the world, but if the public believes the system is rigged, the system fails. The legitimacy of municipal planning relies entirely on the public believing that the process is fair, objective, and equal for everyone.
That hits hard when you hear their core grievance in the waiting room. One of the citizens says the city should be treating us all the same way. They are sitting there, struggling to figure out complex floor area ratio calculations by themselves, while they watch insiders walk in, bypass the line, and get a fast track.
When citizens visibly see a two-tiered system, one where they have to wait for ticket number 47 and struggle with the math, while former insiders intimidate the staff, it completely erodes trust in local government.
It destroys it.
This waiting room scenario shows you that the revolving door doesn't just harm internal departmental processes, it destroys the public's faith. For your exam, always remember, preventing the appearance of a conflict of interest is just as crucial as preventing an actual conflict.
Which begs the question, what is management doing about all this? Let's leave the waiting room and head into the planning department coffee room.
Time to see what the bosses are up to.
We have the new planning director and a long-range planner waiting for the coffee machine. And they are looking out the window, observing the former director, the predecessor to the new boss.
The plot thickens with the people supposedly in charge.
This former director is out there in the office chatting up a brand new planner about development guidelines. The new director notes the irony here. For all the years this guy was in charge of the department, he completely avoided dealing with the public.
But now
Now that he's retired, he's out there schmoozing at the counter, which the new director realizes is just his retirement plan as a private consultant.
classic.
Then the long-range planner asks the pivotal question of this entire text. They ask, how do you think that will go over, him changing roles? They point out the obvious danger. This former director has deep inside information about exactly how development guidelines are applied in that specific municipality.
He knows all the loopholes.
And then the planner asks the director if people in the department have ever heard of a cooling-off period.
Ah, the cooling off period. This is the mechanism designed to fix everything we've discussed so far.
But the new director's response is honestly shocking.
Yeah.
They admit that senior management has never discussed it.
Never discussed it. Wow.
They concede that watching the predecessor schmooze for insider favors probably makes us look less than professional. But the director ends with a helpless dilemma, simply asking, but where's the line?
I want to dig into that question, where's the line? Because it reveals a massive management blind spot. Let's zero in on this for the exam. This section illustrates that relying on individual good judgment is a recipe for disaster.
It just doesn't work.
No, the lack of explicit policy from senior management leaves the entire department ethically vulnerable. It leaves the junior staff intimidated, it leaves the long-range planner cynical, and it leaves the new director conceptually lost on where to draw boundaries.
But is the new director right to be confused? I mean, if there's no official cooling-off period written in the employee handbook, isn't the former director technically doing nothing wrong by coming in and schmoozing?
That is the exact danger of a purely compliance-based mindset. Technically, he might not be breaking a written municipal bylaw, but ethically, he is violating the core tenets of the profession.
Can you define the cooling-off period exactly for the listener?
A cooling-off period is a designated amount of time, usually 1 or 2 years, where a former public employee is legally or ethically barred from lobbying or consulting with their former department.
So they can still work, just not lobby their old colleagues.
Exactly. You see this heavily enforced in federal politics or high-level finance. It is a mandatory buffer designed to allow their insider knowledge to become outdated and to sever the immediate power dynamics they hold over former subordinates.
So the fact that municipal management in this scenario hasn't even discussed it is a massive institutional failure.
Huge.
It's like sending staff onto a football field, but refusing to paint the out-of-bounds lines, and then management stands on the sidelines wondering why the game has devolved into chaos.
That is a brilliant way to look at it. If management doesn't draw the line, the insiders will draw it wherever it benefits them most, which usually means right at the expense of the public interest.
That brings us to the final analytical section of the source document, where the author zooms out from these vignettes and looks at the Canadian Institute of Planners.
The CIP.
This is where we distill exactly what the mandate is. The article points out a harsh truth. There hasn't been much discussion within the CIP about professional ethics in these specific post-employment scenarios.
It's the elephant in the room for the profession.
As planners move from the public to private sectors, it creates these glaring ethical issues that everyone seems to be ignoring. The source document notes that the community at large already thinks it's incredibly important for politicians and very senior civil servants to have a strict cooling-off period.
Which we know they do.
Right. So the article poses a challenge. Shouldn't planners be thinking seriously about this, and not just at the senior director levels, but across the board, like Harlan from the maternity leave swap?
Yes. And here is where we get to the absolute rules you need to lock in for your exam. The text outlines that planners must maintain professional integrity. But what does that actually require according to the CIP? It breaks down into 3 core mandates.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, you must have a keen sense of responsibility to the profession, to your employers, and to the public. Notice that the public is explicitly included in that triad.
To the profession, employers, and the public. Got it.
Second, you must not engage in dishonorable or questionable conduct. That covers the golf tournament bribes and the intimidation tactics we saw in the first scenario.
Right, none of that.
And third, you must actively avoid anything that casts doubt on your professional integrity or reflects adversely on the integrity of the profession as a whole.
That perfectly covers the waiting room optics.
Exactly. If your actions make the citizens with ticket number 47 lose faith in the system, you are violating that third mandate, even if you didn't technically break a law.
It's a remarkably high bar. The article essentially concludes by turning the mirror back on the profession. It asks if the planners in all these scenarios we just discussed, both the ones standing behind the counter and the ones leaning on it from the outside, are conducting themselves ethically.
And we know the answer is no.
Right. And more importantly, it asks how a self-regulating profession should handle these post-employment relationships.
Let's focus on that term, self-regulating profession. As a self-regulating body, planners do not have an outside government watchdog policing their every move or setting their ethical standards.
They govern themselves.
They govern themselves, and with that autonomy comes the ultimate burden to maintain public trust. If the profession doesn't police its own revolving door, if it doesn't establish clear cooling-off periods and enforce post-employment ethics, the public will eventually demand that someone else steps in and does it for them.
Which no profession wants.
No. This text is explicitly challenging the CIP and challenging individual planners studying for this exam to stop ignoring the post-employment transition. You cannot maintain professional integrity if you are treating public service as nothing more than a networking opportunity or a data-gathering mission for your future consulting firm.
Let's take a breath and recap the journey we've been on today. We started with the pushy consultant demanding 4-day turnarounds and offering golf invites, showing the raw intimidation of former authority.
A prime example of what not to do.
Then we moved down the counter to the maternity leave swap, where we saw how even temporary public employment can give a private consultant the internal playbook for amenity contributions.
The asymmetric information trap.
From there, we sat in the waiting room, feeling the public's trust evaporate as they watched insiders bypass the rules in real time. We then stepped into the coffee room, uncovering the dangerous management blind spot, where lack of explicit cooling-off policies leaves everyone helpless.
Management failing to draw the lines.
And finally, we grounded it all in the CIP's core mandate: the absolute necessity of professional integrity, avoiding questionable conduct, and protecting the public interest as a self-regulating body. All of these scenarios scream for the urgent need for clear post-employment ethics.
It is a comprehensive, unvarnished look at the realities of the job. Understanding the weight of these dynamics won't just help you pass a multiple-choice exam, it will help you navigate the very real ethical traps of your actual career.
So as we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over as you continue your exam prep.
A little homework.
The source document features the new director helplessly asking, "Where's the line?" when it comes to post-employment relationships. I want you to think about your own eventual career trajectory.
That's a great exercise.
Imagine if you were to transition from a public sector planning role to a private practice tomorrow. Without waiting for the CIP or your senior management to hand you a rule book, what specific personal boundaries would you need to put in place to guarantee that the insider knowledge sitting in your head never becomes an unfair advantage on paper? Good luck on the exam. You've got
Hmm.
this.